A DC versus Marvel movie? That's right. There are rumors of this from That Park Place from WDW Pro. And if you are a child of the 80s/90s, as I am, this should absolutely terrify you. And I am going to tell you exactly why this should terrify you. I'm going to tell you exactly why this may portend the end of the comic book movie industry, or at least a very large lull thereof, because we have seen this before. We have been in this place before in the comic industry, and I'm going to apologize up front that this video is going to be a lot of me reading things, but I think that getting things precisely worded from the sources where I grabbed them is a very important thing as I move bit by bit through this argument in an article titled Rumor DC versus Marvel crossover movie could be on the horizon, with James Gunn and Russo brothers leading the charge from That Park Place by Marvin Montanaro. We get the following. Recent reports from Comic-Con, have ignited fresh speculation, with an insider claiming that active discussions are underway for a DC versus Marvel movie involving key figures like DC Studios co-CEO James Gunn and Marvel's directing duo, the Russo brothers. This rumor, first reported by Cosmic Book News, points to behind-the-scenes talks fueled by recent comic book collaborations between the two rival universes. The insider scoop from Comic-Con. According to the report, the Hollywood Insider spoke with Cosmic Book News' Matt McGloin at San Diego Comic-Con SDCC 2025, stating that conversations about a big screen clash or team-up between DC and Marvel heroes are not just fans wishful thinking, but active discussions. The source specifically named James Gunn, who oversees the DC Universe (DCU) after his successful tenure at Marvel with the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, and Joe and Anthony Russo, the directors behind blockbuster hits like Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. The Insider highlighted the recent announcement of a DC slash Bat or a Deadpool slash Batman comic crossover as a sign that intercompany collaboration is closer than anyone thinks. We have seen this before. It was a sign of desperation then. It is a sign of desperation now. At the same Comic-Con event, DC and Marvel unveiled a variant cover for Deadpool slash Batman #1, featuring Deadpool wielding the Infinity Gauntlet alongside characters from both universes. This comic, set to release later this year, boasts an all-star lineup of writers including Zeb Wells, Kevin Smith, Kelly Thompson, Chip Zdarsky, Alan Ewing, and Frank Miller, with artists like Greg Capullo, Adam Kubert, Gurahiru, Terry Dodson, DK Ruan, and Frank Miller contributing. We have seen this before. I was 11 years old when this happened the first time in my lifetime, at least the first time that I know of in my lifetime, and it was a very interesting collaboration between Marvel and DC at that time. I'm going to read through a couple of things here and show you some of the pictures of those characters. Please follow with me, because where we are going is going to be someplace that we have to hope is not where the comic book movie industry is going, but Superman performing as it did, which was not great, good, not great, and 3 consecutive Marvel Cinematic Universe duds lead me to believe this might be where we are going. Amalgam Comics, I am getting this from Wikipedia. Amalgam Comics, an amalgamation of Marvel and DC, was a collaborative publishing imprint shared by DC Comics and Marvel Comics, in which the two comic book publishers merged their characters into new ones, e.g., the DC Comics character Batman and the Marvel Comics character Wolverine became the Amalgam Comics character the Dark Claw. These characters first appeared in a series of one-shots, which were published in April 1996. Keep that in mind. April 1996. Between Marvel Comics versus DC number 3 and DC versus Marvel Comics number 4, the last two issues of DC versus Marvel crossover event, a second set of 12 one-shot followed 1 year later in June 1997. April 96, June 97. But without the crossover event as a background, all 24 of these one-shots took place between the aforementioned issues of DC versus Marvel Comics. Marvel Encyclopedia, The Fantastic Four, 2004, originally designated the Amalgam Universe as Earth 962 in the Marvel Universe, multiverse. So this was an event that was actually in the comics. That's what all of this is explaining. The publication history. On two separate occasions, April 96 and June 97, DC and Marvel co-published a total of 24 one-shot issues. The issues were all presented as if the company had existed for decades. So they wanted you to think that this was an established thing. They wanted that air of the two companies having existed for so long to be there through this print run. The issues were all presented as if the company had existed for decades, with stories and editorial comments referring to a fictional history stretching back to the golden age of comic books, including retcons and reboots. For example, they referred to Secret Crisis of the Infinity Hour, an amalgamation of Marvel's superheroes' Secret Wars, and DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths. So these issues also had storylines that were amalgamations of storylines from the other universe. What are the odds that what we see is the Snyder's universe, which was a multiverse story, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is a multiverse story, or leading into a multiverse story, or kind of a multiverse story, or completely a multiverse story, just depending on where it is that you're watching Marvel, or if you're even still watching Marvel. So I think that is something worth keeping in mind. Now, remember, these dates are of April 96 and June 97, right here, April 1996 and June 1997. Just keep that in mind as we go through some of these characters. So this is kind of the lineup here. This is what these characters looked like. This is the aforementioned Batman and Wolverine character right here, the Dark Claw. What were these characters? Cat's Eye was Elektra plus Catwoman. Dare the Terminator was Daredevil plus Deathstroke plus Ravager. Mariner was Namor plus Aquaman. Thorion was Thor plus Orion. How brilliant. Sparrow was Jubilee plus Tim Drake's Robin. Like, how just awkward does this here look? Then you have Dark Claw is Batman and Wolverine. Doctor Strange Fate is Doctor Strange plus Doctor Fate plus Professor X. Speed Demon is Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider plus Barry Allen's The Flash plus Etrigan the Demon. I don't know why all of the three characters have two DC characters in them. Super Soldier equals Captain America plus Superman, which was, the obvious answer here, right? Then we have Amazon, which is Wonder Woman plus Storm. Night Creeper, which is Nightcrawler plus Creeper. Spider Boy is Ben Reilly's Spider-Man plus Connor Kent's Superboy. Iron Lantern is Iron Man plus Hal Jordan's Green Lantern. At the time, the Iron Man IP was not as strong as it is today. By the mid-90s, he was kind of just an also-ran superhero, a C-list, probably, Marvel title. Shatterstar Fire. Guess what characters those are? Shatterstar and Starfire. Now, April 96, June 97, remember those dates, as we have in the foreground all of these wonderful amalgamated characters that all look mostly ridiculous, right? All of them look mostly ridiculous. Dark Claw, this was a trading card. I had this trading card. Kind of cool looking. Looks like something out of Spawn. But I don't think I don't think it's really all that compelling. The mid-90s were something else. The mid-90s meant something else in the comic book industry. Bust of the speculators market. We're back to a Wikipedia article. The comic book speculator market reached a saturation point in the early 90s and finally collapsed between 93 through 97. Remember that June date? It was June 97, wasn't it? So for 5 years, 93 to 97, the comic book industry was utterly collapsing. And they couldn't stay in business. They couldn't sell comics. We'll get to some numbers, some specificity later. 2/3 of all comic book specialty stores closed in this period. It wasn't just that the sales were bad. The sales were so bad, places that comics were sold were closing. So then the comic book industry did not even have any place to distribute their comics. And numerous publishers were driven out of business. Even industry giant Marvel Comics was forced to declare bankruptcy in 1997, although they were able to continue publishing. It is surmised that one of the main factors in Marvel's downfall was the decision to switch to self-distribution via their purchase of Heroes World Distribution. Until then, many publishers went through secondary distributors, such as the current and only mass distributor Diamond Comic Distributors, and Marvel felt it could preserve some cash flow if it made the move to becoming one of the few publishers to also distribute directly from the comic book market. It is easy, I think, to say this in retrospect, but at the time, Marvel had to do something to keep cash. This backfired terribly when the bottom fell out of the market, as they were stocked with multiple printings of variant and collectible issues that were no longer in high demand, and they could not cover the cost of their distribution services. How bad was this collapse for the comic book industry? Well, I asked ChatGPT and got some specifics. Hopefully, these are real numbers. 1991's big comic book event was X-Men #1 with 85 million issues. 1992's biggest event was Death of Superman, which sold 90 million issues. 1994, remember, this is the beginning of the downfall. 1993 was kind of the start. The biggest event sold just 60 million copies, down 33% from 1992. In 1996, the biggest event sold 35 million copies, and in 1998, 30 million copies. This is from the same Wikipedia prompt. Well, a different prompt, but over the same question. The crash from 1996 to 1998, numbers, percentages, and specific titles. By the mid-1990s, the speculator bubble had burst, and the comic book industry went into a near freefall. Peak to crash drop. The industry went from selling 90 million comics per month in 93 to 30 million a month in 97, a 66% collapse in just 4 years. Retail closures. In 1993, there were an estimated 9,000 to 10,000 comic shops in the US. By 1997, that fell to around 4,500. Roughly half the stores gone. Diamond Club Distributors reported that from 1993 to 1996, unit sales of the top 300 comics dropped by 40%. That's nearly half. For every 2 comics you were selling 1. To be specific, for every 10 comics you were selling, you were now selling 6. Marvel's bankruptcy, December of 1996. So we're getting a couple different dates there, but that 96, April 96, June 97 of the Amalgam Comics disaster or experiment, whichever you prefer, was right in between those dates. Marvel's strategy of flooding the market with #1 issues, gimmick covers, and new titles backfired. So one of the things that happened during this period was people realized that these collectibles were a big idea, right? So they would restart Spider-Man #1, That way you had a number one title out there with the big name like Spider-Man. And when you reprinted Spider-Man number one, you would give them 4 different variant covers, and people would have to have them all. And then they realized they were worth nothing. In 1993-1994, Marvel published 140 ongoing or limited series titles per month. By 97, many were canceled. Debt from acquiring Heroes World distribution and Skybox trading cards strained the company. At bankruptcy filing, Marvel's stock price had fallen from $35 in 1993 to under $2. That is in just 3 years there, 4 years there. So notable title sales drops. X-Men number 1 in 1991 sold 8.1 million copies, which was apparently a world record. In 1997, they were selling 150 to 200,000 per issue. The Death of Superman in 92, 6 million copies. Superman books averaged 60 to 80,000 copies. Spawn, 1992, 1.7 million copies. By late 97, 200,000 copies. Amazing Spider-Man, 1993, 800,000 copies per issue. And in 97, 150 to 170,000. And then this is a graph. The blue number is peak sales. The red number is, or the red bar is by 1997. Those are the sales that you were looking at the time. How accurate that is, that seems overblown to me compared to the things that I remember hearing. But what I'm saying is, we have seen this desperation from this industry before. In 96, when Marvel was going bankrupt, they went to DC and said, hey, do things suck for you too? And DC said, yeah, things suck. Why don't we do something together? And afterwards, what happened? That was in 96 and 97. Have you read any comics that were published since 2000 that were Marvel or DC? So it's kind of backwards, actually, from the movies to now. All of the woke stuff made its way into comics basically after that point. After the 96, 97, they kind of couldn't pay the people who were telling good stories, so they brought in a bunch of people that would just tell stories. And when you get people that just will tell stories, they're going to put all their own stuff in there. And that's where we started getting the woke stuff in comics on a real industrial scale. In the movies, the woke stuff led into the crash. So it is just absolutely mind-boggling that these things are happening once again. This is history repeating itself. Marvel can't keep making the movies that they're making and have them failing the way that they're failing. Fantastic Four made some money at the box office, but it didn't make money versus what they spent on it. Thunderbolts was apparently a pretty good movie, didn't make any money. Captain America seems to have been the absolute turd that it was always going to be. I didn't see any of those movies. I don't care anymore. I was a diehard for this stuff. I can't tell you how many times I saw The Dark Knight in theaters. I can't tell you how many times I went and saw The Dark Knight, Iron Man, and that was the same summer as Tropic Thunder, right? Those all came out at the same time, right? I just kept going to the theater and seeing those movies. I canceled my Disney Plus. I don't have any of this stuff anymore. I pulled up so many Marvel movies from the period after I had stopped going to the theaters and tried to watch them. And I couldn't get through them. Black Widow was a decent movie. I thought that it was a decent movie. There's an incredible irony in there that the main villain, and I keep wanting to make a video about this, but I'm probably never going to get around to it, so I'll just talk about it for a moment here. The main villain in that movie, everybody wants to kill the guy. Everybody wants to kill the guy. Women are always the victim. Let's go kill that guy. And then it turns out it's a woman, and we have to save her. Because women aren't disposable the way that men are disposable. There's a big thing about male disposability. I don't know if you've heard any of those arguments, but all of this has happened before. Marvel and DC teaming up. It wasn't remotely interesting the last time outside of character design. It won't be remotely interesting this time outside of the lineups. There's no reason to make this movie. This movie would mean simply the end of everything as we really know it. Is really all it would mean. There's no going back from that. There is nothing salvageable from that amalgamation. That would have to mean the reboot of Marvel. That would have to mean the reboot of DC. How do you go back to that after you realize, we can just jump dimensions and grab Superman? There's no going back from that. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting a like button really does help me out. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, this is one of the things that I cover on this channel. I cover some stuff about archaeology news. I cover some stuff about AI news. I do random culture stuff, things like that, a little bit of philosophy now and then. But I hope to have you back for the next one.